Hotep World, this your brother Matthew Daniels, aka M Pooh, aka The Chosen Few, aka The Real Bookworm. I'm not a bookworm, I'm the real bookworm. Make sure you get it right. And today, in this video, we are going to be talking about the setting of your book. If you're writing a book, if you're thinking about writing a book, if you may write a book or may decide to write a book in the future, you're going to have a setting for your book. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to explain to you what a setting is. I'm going to give you some tips that I use, some advice that I use to assist me with the creation of the setting of my book. And I'm also going to tell you about a time that I made a mistake with the setting of my book and I was not able to complete the book. So what I want you to understand from the very beginning is the setting of your book is very, very important. I want you to give it a lot of thought before you actually start the book. The setting of the book is just as important as the plot. And you may not understand it, but take my word for it. The setting of the book can either make or break your ability to actually complete the work. So first, what I'm going to do, we're going to talk about what a setting is. What does that word even mean? What are we talking about here? So the definition of setting, the setting for your book, is the place or type or surroundings where something is positioned or where an event takes place. So what we're talking about is where the events inside of your book actually happen. Okay, is it on planet Earth? Is it on planet Mars? Is it on planet Jupiter? Is it on the surface of the sun? Is it on the moon? Depending on what type of book you're actually writing. Is it in North America? Is it in Africa? Is it in Asia? Is it in Russia? Is it in what specific city in that specific country on that specific continent? Where are these events taking place? And another thing about setting that you want to understand is the time period that these events are happening in. You want to think about, are you going to write your book from the perspective of the year that you're in right now? Like, let's say if I was going to write a book, I could write it from the perspective of the characters living in the year 2020. Is it going to be in the past? Is it going to be written in 1980? Is it going to be written in 1860? Is it going to be written in 1642? Is it going to be written in 2500 BCE? Is it going to be written in the future? Are my characters going to be in a future setting? Are they going to be in the year 3000? Are they going to be in the year 2043? Are they going to be in the year 4000? These are things that you need to think about and really, really consider before you begin to try to write your first book. And I'm going to tell you about a time where I messed up, and then we're going to talk about some tips that'll help you with your setting and that'll help you actually complete your book. Because what we want you to do, we want you to actually start and finish your project. A lot of people start writing and they never finish. So what I'm going to do, since I have written several books and I have one book published already, my first book, Suicide Note, is doing really well. I have my second book almost ready to release. It's going to be coming out in just a few months, thicker than water. I'm not going to say that I'm the number one author in the world, but I'm somebody who has actually completed the process. So I'm somebody who you should feel comfortable listening to. And what I'm telling you is real world experience that I've actually lived, problems that I've had, successes that I've had, failures that I've had, successes that I've had. And I'm giving this information to you for free because I want to see you achieve your goals of becoming a published author and completing your novel. One of the first books that I wanted to write, because I was real big on science fiction. I'm a sci-fi guy. I like that type of thing. I like thinking about aliens and UFOs, and I like thinking about time travel. I like thinking about multiple dimensions. You know, I like thinking about those types of things. So early on in my career, I was attempting to write a book. I wanted to write a science fiction book. And so I wanted to write the science fiction novel from the perspective of someone who traveled back in time. Now, I didn't know then what I know now about the importance of a setting. So I didn't contemplate the pitfalls that I would run into trying to write a book about time travel before I actually started. And I made it about halfway through the book and I hit a roadblock. And so what I did was I had my main character, for whatever reason, I'm not going to go into the whole plot of the book because I may write that later on and I don't want nobody snatching my idea and using it, right? But I will give you some basic overview so you'll understand what I'm saying. My main character, I had him get on a plane and he was flying from the United States to Africa, like on an archaeological type of expedition. Okay. And so when he was flying over the Atlantic Ocean, the plane went over the iconic Bermuda Triangle. Everyone should be pretty much familiar with the Bermuda Triangle. They talk about all of these mysterious events that happen in the Bermuda Triangle. So I wanted to capitalize off of that idea that was already in the minds of the public and utilize it for my own gain within my book. So what I was doing was I had the main character get on a plane and he was going to be flying to Africa for archaeological reasons. But when he crossed through the Bermuda Triangle, through the mysterious things that happened, that people talk about happening in the Bermuda Triangle, he went into a time warp. He went into a wormhole. He went into a ecological disturbance and it sent him back in time. Okay, in my book, I didn't have anyone invent a time machine. I had my main character travel through time based on the mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle. And so what happened was when he went back in time, he landed in Africa, and long story short, after a period of time, he realized what had happened. But what ended up happening with me while I was not able to complete the book, one thing is I didn't properly consider the setting of my book before I started. Now remember, the setting is the time period in which something happens and it's the place. Okay, now in order for you to be a successful author and for you to write a successful book and to write a book that people can actually sink their teeth into, your descriptions have to be very, very good. Okay, you have to be able to describe a thing in such a way that people can actually get drawn into it and they can see everything that you're talking about in their mind's eye. Okay, so the number one thing about a setting is you want your setting to be something that you can adequately describe and explain. Okay, and if you can't adequately describe it and explain it, you need to be able to know what resources you have available to assist you in adequately explaining and describing this particular setting. Now, my problem was I couldn't adequately describe areas in Africa surrounding the Sahara Desert thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. Okay? In my mind, I did not understand what type of animals needed to be in a particular setting like that. What type of fauna, what type of plant life needed to be in a setting like that. I didn't even have a good grasp on what stage of development humanity was in thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands, 10,000 years ago in the area that we know today as being the Sahara Desert. So I was not able to realistically describe the interactions of my character with primitive man because I didn't fully understand how primitive man lived back then, right? I didn't understand what they wore. I didn't understand how they hunted. I didn't understand what they hunted. I didn't understand what type of, because they say, if you go 10, 20,000 years back in the past, the Sahara Desert actually had water, vegetation, it was lakes, it was rivers, it was trees, it was plants, it was grass. It wasn't the desert that we know today. That happened over time. But I didn't know what type of trees, what type of grass, what type of plants, what type of flowers, what type of insects. I did not understand what type of animal life, plant life, and human life would have existed in that setting at that particular point in time in history that I was trying to take my main character into. And unfortunately, I was in a situation to where I couldn't adequately research those things quick enough to actually make the story and finish the story. So my sci-fi novel of my individual going back in time, because of my lack of understanding about the importance of a setting, the place and time in which the characters interact, I was not able to complete my book. And so I put that book to the side, and I still have the general plot in my head, but I moved on to write other things. So in order to avoid that, what you want to do, especially if you're just starting off, a good thing is to have the setting of your book in an area that you are familiar with. People that know me and are familiar with my works, you know that my first book that I wrote, Suicide Note, is centered in Dickinson, Texas. The setting is in Dickinson, Texas. Now, you don't know me. A lot of you don't know me. A lot of you do. But I live 15 minutes away from Dickinson, Texas. I've been going back and forth to Dickinson, Texas my whole life, and I have family members who live in Dickinson, Texas. My mother is originally from Dickinson, Texas. So it was not difficult for me to use Dickinson, Texas as a setting because I'm familiar with the area. I know the streets. I know the buildings. I know the attitude of the people. I know the attitude of the law enforcement, right? And my book was centered around street culture, and so I had a good understanding of the street culture in Dickinson. So the setting of the book allowed me to write it uninhibited. My second book that's going to be released in a few months is called Thicker Than Water. Now, Thicker Than Water is set in Texas City, Texas, right? Texas City, Texas. That's where I'm from, born and raised. I know Texas City like I know the back of my hand, okay? I know the streets, I know the buildings, I know the people, I know the landscape, okay? I can close my eyes and I can walk from the dike all the way to 146. I can go from 146 all the way to I-45. I can go from I-45 all the way down to Dickinson. It's right up the street. So even if I wanted my characters to go to a neighboring city, if that came up in me writing the book, it would be easy for me to follow that path because I'm familiar with the area. Okay, so I utilized that method myself, and I was able to create several books just by placing them in a setting that I am familiar with. And I was successful with that. Now, you may not want to make your book in Texas City. You may not want to make your set in Dickinson, or you may not want to make it in your hometown. But what might be good is even if you name the city that your characters are in, even if you name it by another name, you can still use the names of buildings and landmarks that you are familiar with, because that will help you remember and that will help you coordinate the actions of the characters. Like you can say that your characters are in San Francisco, okay? And your main character may go to a corner store in San Francisco. Now, you may have never been to San Francisco or seen any of the stores in San Francisco. So what you can do, a quick, easy tip or tool that you can use, you can picture a corner store in your area and just describe it as if it's a store in San Francisco, okay? Because the setting is important, or before you actually write the book, do your research, okay? Now, that's kind of for more advanced writers who have a lot of time to invest, but if that's where you want to take your book, get on the internet, research San Francisco, reach out to people from San Francisco on Facebook, ask them questions, just do your research, make your notes, and then you can make it as if you've actually been to San Francisco just by looking it up and reading about it, right? And again, if you want to write a story about an individual going to another planet, you really have a lot of leeway with that one, because the average individual doesn't know how it would be living on another planet. You're making all of that up anyway. But just know that that's going to take a whole lot of creative power, because if you're talking about them living on a planet that science has told us that there's no life on that we know of, then you are going to have to create an entire ecosystem within your own mind. And that may be something that you want to do when you're more established as an author. If you're just starting out and you have a solid plot, right? You have a solid plot in your mind, and you know that you can write a solid story. What might help is making the setting of your story being in an area that you know. And even if you name it, like I could have named the city that's going to be in my second book, Thicker Than Water, that's coming out in a few months. I could have called it Imperial City and described Texas City, right? I could have called it anything in the world, right? So that's something that I want you guys to be aware of, and that's a tip that I'm going to give you. The setting of the book can kill the book, and sometimes you'll hear writers, they'll be talking about writer's block. Okay, they'll be talking about writer's block because they are writing a story about things that aren't actually a reality to them. Okay, and so if it's not a reality to them, then it takes a lot more creative power to push that type of a story out. Another tool that you might want to use is, draw a lot from your personal experiences. Okay, I'm not telling you to write an autobiography, and I'm not telling you to write your personal business in a book, but what I'm saying is draw from personal experience. If you want to write a romance novel, okay, it could be something as simple as, okay, you're writing a romance novel. All novels, all books need scenes. Things need to happen inside of the book, right? So if you're writing a romance novel, at some point, eventually, the man and the woman are most likely they're going to go out on some type of a date, right? Now, instead of having to use your creative power to create the whole scenario surrounding a date, you can think about a date that you've been on, or a date that one of your friends have been on that they have told you about. And let's say if you've been to Chili's before, your characters can go to Chili's. And so it'll be easier for you to describe that, for you to talk about the feelings and the thoughts and the emotions that your characters are having while they are having that date at Chili's, because you've experienced it before yourself. Or you may want to just contact a friend and be like, hey, I'm going to be writing I'm going to be adding another scene in my book. They're going to be going out on a date. I'm not sure where I want to take them out on a date at in the book. Can you give me some ideas? Where are some places that you've been on a date at, to? And they may say, well, I remember when me and my significant other, we went to Cancun, Mexico, or we took a cruise, or we went skydiving, and you may be like, oh man, skydiving, that's pretty awesome. Can you tell me about it? And when they tell you about it, you take a whole lot of mental notes, and you may want to get a piece of paper and a pen and write down some of those notes. And then you put your characters into that scenario. Now, what you're doing is you're not writing your book is not about your friend or your friend's experience, but books have to sound realistic. So no matter how hard you try to make it all fiction and made up, the best fiction is based on reality. Remember that. The best fiction is based on reality. People want to be able to grasp what it is that you're saying. They want to be able to see it. They want to be able to feel it and feel like it makes sense. If you're talking about someone going skydiving, when you describe the emotions that your character is feeling right before they jump out the plane, it's in your best interest to ask someone who has jumped out a plane how they felt before they did it. And then you take what they say and you put those real emotions onto your fictional character. Okay? So, setting. Remember, the setting is just as important as the plot itself. Whatever the book is about, the book has to be about something, right? The book has to be about something. You can't start the book without having a plot, and we'll go into plots in another video. But the setting is one of the most important things in the world when you're thinking about writing a book, okay? And based on whatever setting you decide to put your book in, it could either make or break the project. Like me, I put my setting somewhere in the past that I couldn't describe, in a place of the world that I couldn't describe. So by default, I couldn't write the book. You don't want to make the same mistake that I made. Make the setting something that you can adequately describe. And if you know that you cannot adequately describe the setting, research it first. Look some stuff up on the internet. Ask a couple of people some questions. Talk to somebody. When you have your scenes in your book, if you're going to talk about somebody having a car chase, right? They're running from the police, having a car chase. Look up a few articles online. Read a few articles online and just see how a car chase really plays out in real life. Or maybe you've had a car chase before in your life. Recall that. Or maybe you know someone who has. Talk to them about it. Memorize what they said. Take notes. This is how you make the book real. But the setting is one of the most important things in the world to a book. I advise you make the setting something that you are familiar with. Me, my first book was in Dickinson. My second book is in Texas City. And I wrote those without a problem, without a hiccup. It was easy peasy, and you can use that idea too. Just because I wrote a book and I made it the setting as Texas City, you can write a book in Texas City too. You can write a book in Dickinson. There's nobody has a monopoly on a setting. Oh, and about the time period, I made it considered around the time period that I was living in, so I wouldn't have to use too much of my creative power. I know what's what. I know what people are on the internet. People are on iPhone. People are on Androids. People are on Facebook. I live it, so I don't have to think about that too much, and I don't have to research that too much because I see it and I live it every day. I hope this helped you guys out. Go back and make sure you watch my other video about character development. Make sure you go to that website, www.thechosenfew. I'm sorry. That's my YouTube, The Chosen Few. Go to my website, www.TheRealBookWorm.com. My website is www.TheRealBookWorm.com. It's a lot of other videos on there, things that you can watch that'll give you motivation, things that you can watch that'll help you when you're actually trying to write your book, more tips, more tricks, more ideas. And it's also a section where you can go. It's called contact. You can click on the contact tab, and you can actually leave your name, your email address, a subject, and you can actually leave a short message to where you can interact with me directly and ask me some direct questions. Let me know what type of book you're writing, questions that you have about writing books, questions about my books, and I'm going to respond to you. You can even register on my actual website, and I like when people do that too, because it's attached to an app where we can have an online forum, and it's like an online membership group where individuals that frequent my website, we can all communicate with one another, share ideas. I can tell you guys when I have new things coming up. You'll automatically get updates when I upload new videos, and whenever I have a new book drop, you'll automatically get the update first. So go check out that website, www.TheRealBookWorm.com, and make sure you like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this video. And if you haven't already, go buy that book, Suicide Note by Matthew Daniels, and be on the lookout for my sophomore novel, Thicker Than Water. Thicker Than Water is one of my favorite books that I've ever written. And I'm not just saying that. I love this book. Maybe because it's from Texas City like me. Matthew Daniels, a.k.a. Ampu, a.k.a. The Chosen Few, a.k.a. The Real Bookworm. I'm not a bookworm. I'm the real bookworm. Make sure you get it right. And as always, may your name live on forever, and may your memory never die. Hotel.